Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Vinny Eastwood Show. It's the lighter side of genocide, because in a world so full of chaos and madness, if you lose your sense of humour about things, you'll go frickin' nuts. We're broadcasting live, 5 days a week, on AmericanFreedomRadio.com, from the fabulously fluoridated capital of Auckland, New Zealand, the island and chains nation, in the sunny, slave South Pacific. It's frickin' gorgeous down here. It's not only fluoridated, it's also Fukushima irradiated, which according to the Prime Minister John Key, is good for the economy. Now, today we have a very special guest, Mr. John Ansell from Treatygate, and we're having some problem with his connections, as was expected. And so what I'm going to do is attempt to grab his phone number and chuck it in for AFR so we can connect him up via the phone as well. And I've only have a cell phone number for See, this is the frustrating thing. Right, John.
Me, Vinny?
Yeah, you're there now for maybe a minute or two, John. Would you be able to quickly flick me your landline number there so we can connect you on that, just in case your Skype drops out again, because this is the fourth or fifth time it's dropped out already and we haven't even started the show yet.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on.
Right, I got it. So don't worry, we'll get you connected on that one shortly. If
Wellington.
Yep. Don't worry, man. We got it all sorted. And you just gave everybody who's listening your phone number. So let's hope you don't get a rash of angry calls. And maybe we'll try and edit that out of the archives, eh? So while we're getting John connected, AFR, can you hear me, by the way? Are you connecting him? Because I'm not sure 100% what's going on because he's dropped off again. I hate this. Really hate this when you have these kind of technical difficulties. Skype's normally really, really good. Just sweet as, no problem. It works. And you got high audio quality. You can do the video and all of that kind of stuff. And on occasions, you get massively, massively technically fracked out. It's like really nasty. Okay, now, speaking of Treatygate, and this is what John's going to be on here today. By the way, AFR, what the frack are you doing? Are we going to connect John, or what? Are you even there? Are you having water? Are you going to the bathroom? You taking a wiki leak? What's going on here? Come on, bro. Help me out a little here. He's talking about Treatygate. Now, for those of you in the rest of the world who don't know what Treatygate is, we are a crown colony, a little country here, and on top of that, the thing that's happened, at least according to my research and experience, talking with a number of Maori elders and so on and so forth, is that the founding document of this country, the Treaty of Waitangi, has not been adhered to, and indeed has been manipulated and a source of revenue for what some kaumātua told me called the brown elite, as it were. Okay, you know how there's an elite, you know, like the evil scumbaggery individuals, you know? Well, there's sections of elites in every culture and every society. Okay, now, John, I believe we've got you on the phone now. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm on the phone. I'm also seeing myself on the video. I can see you. I don't know if this is going to last, but
yeah.
Anyway, we're on the phone.
All right, excellent. Okay, well, I've just been talking about the sort of the treaty and how a lot of founding documents don't get followed in any way to their T, and how now currently there's varying forms of elites that are running the globe, including a quote unquote brown elite, which a kaumātua Maori elders were telling me about. That are now ruling the kind of treaty grievance industry and lining their own pockets with the money that would ordinarily go to the average Maori, who are currently miraculously overrepresented in poverty statistics and so on and so forth. But anyway, let's get on to you and yourself and what it is you do. Could you give a brief background? Because a lot of people listening wouldn't know your kind of background, and we hung out a little bit, and you told me a bit about your advertising past, and I thought it was remarkably interesting, and it gives a lot of depth to your character when people know.
Character, advertising. You don't hear those two words in the same sentence very often.
Not very often at all, but you are pretty exceptional.
Well, Vinny, I started, I guess, as an advertising copywriter. I got involved with the Labour Party in '87, did a campaign for them on the radio, another one in '90 and '93, but I became increasingly disenchanted with the socialists, I guess, and refused to work for them after that. I saw Don Brash coming up for the National Party in 2003 when he started, I think, and put my hand up to do that campaign. And that campaign became quite well known. It was a series of billboards with red on the left and blue on the right. The red represented the Labour Party, and it had the Prime Minister's face. And the blue represented the National Party, the right-wing party, for your American listeners who wear the colours are the other way around. But and the most remembered of those billboards, which did make a big difference to them, although they didn't quite win, was one called Iwi Kiwi. And Iwi, for your overseas listeners, means tribe, means Maori tribe. Kiwi is the name for New Zealanders. So the point then was that the word beaches was at the top. Beaches, iwi, kiwi. Iwi, the Labour Party were standing for iwi, the tribes and the National Party were standing for all New Zealanders, including iwi. Well, that's how we explained it. But this, of course, brought accusations of racism. Any time you stand up on this issue in New Zealand, you are called a racist if you don't happen to believe that the country should be surrendered to the part descendants of the rebels who rose up against the state in the 1860s. These are those same families. They're just a minority of Maori. Anyway, I saw this increasingly happening, and when I want someone to solve my problems, I usually mean someone else. When someone should stand up and say something. On this particular issue, I thought, well, perhaps that someone might be me, given my association with that issue through the Iwi Kiwi billboard. So I started to study the history to see whether my forefathers were the, merciless brutes, the evil colonizers that they'd been made out to be in our schools and universities and on our media and anywhere you care to look. And I found that, in fact, the opposite was the case. And so what we are party to, really for the last 40 years, is a con job. I can only call it Treatygate because that's what you call scandals. I'd rather be more original. But it's a con job on a misrepresentation of New Zealand history, which makes out that the Maori chiefs were sitting in this sort of South Pacific paradise, sunning themselves when the evil British came in and brutalized them. And you get people saying, it's the big lie principle. It's the Hitler big lie principle. Don't just tell a small lie, because people expect politicians to tell small lies. If you want to win, you tell a big lie. So you get people like the Maori Party co-leader Tariana Turia saying that there was a Holocaust in Taranaki, the province of Taranaki. Well, in fact, there were three. The first was the invasion by the Waikato people in 1831, who holocausted a third of the Taranaki, enslaved another third, and another third fled to Wellington. Of that third that fled, 900 hijacked a ship to the Chatham Islands out to the west and holocausted. That really was a holocaust of the Maori people. About 1,500 of them ended up dying, which was virtually all of them. There were about 1,600. About 1,500 ended up dead. That was a real genocide, a real holocaust. But we're not supposed to talk about that, so I do. I say that the worst thing that the British were supposed to have done in Taranaki was the invasion of Parihaka, which was a village which was set up illegally on land which had been confiscated rightly for the rebellion, for the earlier rebellion. And this village was set up, and the Crown had been patiently asking Te Whiti, who was the almost self-proclaimed Jesus of Parihaka.
Okay, we seem to have lost John again.
Marshaled horse went in, and
you're back.
apart from one boy who had his foot stood on by accident by a trooper's horse, nobody died. And so I say, what was the death toll at Parihaka in Taranaki? 0. What was the death toll in the Chatham Islands of the invasion by Taranaki? 1,572. You point that out to the New Zealand media or in these various constitution debates, in quotes, that we've been having, all one-sided, and you're called a racist. Have I explained myself clearly as to where I've come from?
Okay,
I've gone on a bit, Vinny, but I think
so basically, big-time ad man actually helped one of the, in fact, both sides of the political stripe come to power, and got disillusioned with both sides of the political strife, and then for telling the truth, now you get endlessly demonized and called a racist. Is that about right?
All of our parties are, they're both left-wing parties, really. I mean, the Labour Party in the 80s was a right-wing party. This is the equivalent of the Democrats, was a right-wing party, implementing a form of Thatcherism or Reaganomics called Rogernomics here, after Roger Douglas. So I was kind of comfortable with that. Then they progressively reverted to type, and along came Helen Clark, so I didn't like the sound of her. She's now running the UN in part. And she was put there by the so-called right-wing Prime Minister we have now, John Key, who's really a centrist. A centrist is someone who charts a comfortable path between right and wrong. Well, on this issue, he's dead wrong. He's worse than Helen Clark. He's giving away the country in spades. I mean, what sort of country surrenders itself, not from a position of weakness, not to save its beaten population from unspeakable agonies, not in the face of a conquering horde, but from a position of strength? What sort of country does that? And what sort of country pays reparations? Where do the victors in a war of rebellion, the people who put down the rebellion, where else in the world do their great-grandchildren pay reparations to the great-grandchildren of the defeated rebels? But that's what happens here down under.
It sounds like, hold on a second. If I was a king, per se, and I were to loan a peasant a shockingly large amount of cash, and then when that peasant dies, I then hold that debt over his children and every subsequent generation of his family. Is that sort of what we're talking about here?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. What have you and I done wrong, Vinny? I mean, I bailed up a guy. In fact, he came to see me. A fellow called Dr. Carwyn Jones, Boyle, who claims to be Maori. He took issue with the fact that I'd called him a make-believe Maori on my blog because he's basically Welsh. He denies that. And I said, it's an extraordinary coincidence that your father decided to call you Carwyn, which is the same name as the Welsh Prime Minister, I understand. But he, I said to him, Carwyn, why do I owe you money? You are apparently, you say on your website, you're of Ngāti Kahungunu and Te Aitanga a Mahaki descent. Nothing about Ngāti Cardiff or anywhere like that. You say that you're Maori, and you say that I have to pay, my kids have to pay you and your kids money. Why? And he says, well, for example, my grandmother was prevented from speaking Maori at school. I said, and therefore she was prevented from teaching her kids Maori and their kids Maori, and I therefore don't know Maori to teach my kids, although they're in a full immersion Maori school. And how they'll emerge with any knowledge of the language of the world, I don't know. But anyway, this man who is a doctor thinks that is justification for paying him money. I said, look, I happen to be in a family outnumbered by Taiwanese. My wife is Taiwanese. Her son, my stepson, didn't speak Chinese at school either, but she made damn sure that he spoke it at home because she spoke it to him. He ended up with the English prize at a school, by the way. and ducks. But, this is what happens, that the immigrants come in and do really well. The locals just moan about how little privilege they have. In fact, everybody's bending over backwards to indulge them endlessly. It's just this sense of entitlement. It's gone too far. There were, I think we probably all agree that certain injustices occurred here and there, but they've been well and truly compensated for. Sometimes 4 or 5 times in the case of the Ngāi tribe. The Ngāi tribe were 2,000 strong in the South Island, 2,000 strong in 1840, and have now been given $170 million with more to come.
Well, hold on, John, we're going to have to stop you right there. Not because it's too controversial, but because we're coming to break. We'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen, at the VinnyEastwoodShow.com. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Vinny Eastwood Show, live from New Zealand, governed by our fabulous, what's his name, Federal Reserve employee, former John Key, derivatives trader, John Key, sell us out to the UN and destroy the country basically by getting it into massive astronomical quantities of debt. John Key, yeah, that's what this country is all about. Now, if you have a Prime Minister who's an international banker, you can be rest assured that pretty much everything in your country will get fracked up sooner or later. My very special guest is John Ansell. And John, what's your website again? Is it treatygate.wordpress.com?
Treatygate.org.com, yeah. Treatygate.org. Treatygate.org.nz. Treatygate.org.nz. It is, in fact, a WordPress site, but treatygate.org.nz.
Okay.
And, we try and... Yep.
Oh, sorry. You try and...
Oh, well, we just put up the topical events of the day. Yesterday, what was it? Oamaru North School. Now, Oamaru is a town in the South Island. The only thing it's really known for is its beautiful Victorian architecture built out of this white stone, which sculptors use to make beautiful sculptures all around the place, sculptures. And they make have this beautiful stone down there and these beautiful buildings, including basilicas and all sorts.
Oh, hold on, John, hold on 1 second. Are you able to press the little microphone mute button on your Skype there? We're getting some form of an echo.
Little mute button. That'll mean...
It'll look like a miniature microphone sort of on your Skype there, and if you just click that, it'll turn off your microphone so that you're just talking through it. Yep, that's perfect.
Done? Yeah, so in Oamaru there, the local school, Oamaru North School, has they sent their teachers on a staff training day, what do they call it, professional development. It was, in fact, a Treaty of Waitangi brainwashing session. And they came away full of the joys of, Maori superiority, and they unilaterally decided that the children would be instructed to identify Oamaru, not with the stone architecture, the lovely buildings that had been the symbol of the town for the last 150 years, but with some primitive rock drawings, Maori rock drawings, 42 kilometres out of town in a place called Duntroon. So the syllabus, the social studies syllabus, now requires the children to regard as the symbol of Oamaru some rock drawings half an hour out of town, and not the buildings that they see all around them, which everybody else associates with Oamaru. That's just one small example of the Maorification of everything. That was yesterday's example.
Now, there was also a element, we were talking about psychopaths on a show a couple of days ago. And what was very interesting is we got into the discussion of race and different groups. And what was interesting is that the way that you divide people is you force one group of people to tolerate another group of people. They'd automatically tolerate them, but because they're forced to tolerate them, they start to hate them. Isn't that interesting?
Well, I'm afraid that is what's happening here. I'm obviously, as somebody fronting this issue, I am assumed to hate Maori deeply. It doesn't go with my brand that I should actually have Maori friends or that actually like some Maori. But that's true of me, and it's true of others, that we do. That's why this is such an uncomfortable issue. we're potentially offending people we've been to school with, people we work with, people we know and like, and the country is being polarised, not because of Maori, but because of a minority of this minority. Maori in New Zealand are supposed to be 15%. There's so much intermarriage now, and that's another interesting factor for people that are supposed to have been so brutalised or hate the Pākehā so much. There's been an awful lot of intermarriage. There are no full-blooded Maori left, or very few. But, this is about a minority, and I would be very, very happy if, as a result of this campaign, the what I call achiever Maori, the people that live with achiever values like everybody else, rise up and tell the grievers, this minority who are after all the money, that they don't speak for them. Now, I'm very, very pleased that at my next meeting in Hamilton, which is our fourth largest city, the meeting has been organised by Tim Wickeriffe, a Maori a libertarian, Christian Maori libertarian, probably the only one. But he is so strong on this issue, and I'm hoping that others will be inspired by him, and so that it won't be this sort of lone European who is doing all this stuff. There will be a large body of Maori who take the issue on themselves.
Now, here's the other thing. If you don't like what somebody's saying, let's say, for example, you're brainwashed and somebody comes out to you with a very, very hard truth with hard facts, and it really corrupts their entire systemized education system. The first thing that they do is they start name-calling. Right, it's designed to ridicule and to get people to switch off. I've heard a number of interviews with you. You keep getting cut off. You keep getting called names. You keep having people call up and talk about the exact same thing over and over again. And it's like people just aren't willing to listen. It's like they can't hear it because they have purposefully blocked themselves off from facts and evidence.
Facts are an impediment. Facts in New Zealand are regarded as the ultimate inconvenient truths. They really are things to be avoided. Facts like the Maori invasion and so many other things. The truth of the Treaty of Waitangi, the fact that the real English draft was found in 1989, but has been covered up by the state. And that particular draft makes it clear that the treaty was with all the people of New Zealand, not just Maori. The fact that the principles of the treaty, which were invented in 1989 also, I call it the Treaty of Wellington by Geoffrey Palmer, a Prime Minister at the time, we're supposed to abide by the principles of the treaty. He made them up. They don't occur anywhere in the actual treaty. They're his sort of fantasy of what he would have liked the actual treaty to be. Over and over again, facts are just set aside in favour of the prevailing fantasy. And a lot of people just can't get around this idea, can't get their head around the idea, because they've been brainwashed for 40 years to believe one truth, that somebody could be getting up and saying such supposedly divisive things. Now, I urge people to recognise a great difference between criticism and racism. What I'm into is criticism. But look, even if I was racist to my little cotton socks, it wouldn't matter as long as the things I was saying were true. Truth is what matters, isn't it? Not whether you like or dislike people or not. It wouldn't matter if I hated every last Maori person. What would matter is whether what I'm saying is the truth. But that is, it's taking a while for people for the penny to drop on that. They say, oh, well, he's a racist because he's coming out with these things. He's a racist, therefore nothing he says can be listened to. Now, that's just fundamentally illogical, isn't it? First of all, I'm not racist, but second of all, if I was, it wouldn't matter either.
Well, they're suffering cognitive dissonance. They've had a reality created for them, and they've structured their life around that reality. And what you're doing is you're pulling the support strut directly out of that building that they've closed themselves in on. And, of course, you're the one who's demolished their house. You're a bad person. You're an evil, evil man, John Ansell.
Indeed I am. I shall put my white hat on. But look, this is something that all of the New Zealand elites are doing. Now, you view this from a broader, more global perspective. I'm not an expert on Agenda 21 and all the UN stuff, but I can certainly see how this might well fit in, because here it's the political elite. This right-wing prime minister who campaigned on abolishing the separate Maori seats. It's our little form of apartheid that we've had since 1876. Campaigned on that and then got in and became the champion for Maori sovereignty by doing an unnecessary coalition deal with the Maori party. He was looking ahead. I've worked for this man. I couldn't do it. I couldn't take my pay. So I left because I realised he is not interested in New Zealand at all. He is interested in John Key first, the National Party second. Anything else is irrelevant. So he did this deal, which nobody wanted. He didn't even need it to get the majority, but he did it because he thought he was looking ahead to the next election and thought, as things close up between us and Labour, we might need some favours from the Maori party, so we'll give them everything they want. And so they have. And so now abolishing the Maori seats are off the agenda. We'll probably have more soon after the Maori electoral roll campaign, because Maori here get the chance to decide whether they want to go on the general roll or the Maori roll, and more are being urged to go on the Maori roll. And he's now set up a constitutional review.
Shoot. Now, here's another element. I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's something that reminded me. I was listening to you on the radio with John Tamahiri and Willie Jackson, and I called in, but the show ended before I was able to go to me as a caller, and I had two simple questions. Willie Jackson, how much money has been taken from treaty claims just in general? And specifically, just a supplementary to that one, how much of that has filtered down to the ordinary Maori? And Willie Jackson, what kind of car do you drive?
Willie Jackson drives a very flash SUV.
He drives a Dodge Ram.
I went up to him I went up to Waitangi. I didn't know what was going to happen there. I thought I might have got shot. But I saw him at Waitangi, which is the place where we celebrate our supposedly our National Day. And he was driving a very flash SUV, as was Tamahiri. He drives his boy to King's College in the SUV. King's College is probably our flashest school in Auckland. He claims that the money isn't getting through. I think it's certainly getting through to Willie and to Tamahiri. I was told, I don't know whether it's true, but May Chen, who is probably no friend of mine, was talking in a race debate the other day and saying that John Tamahiri's got $50 million out of this. Now, that's unconfirmed, but look, you wouldn't bet against it. These guys at the top are coining it. The people down the bottom, the stats are just as bad. And they say they use it to justify further money. Hone Harawira said to me, and Hone Harawira is the head of the Mana party, Mana meaning sort of status in Maoridom. Now, he said to me, it's all very well you talking about a colourblind state and all this, but, our people remain at the bottom. Well, look, if they choose not to accept their privileges, what are we to do about it? I mean, they get privileges galore in New Zealand. I was told that there were no such thing as Maori privileges, so I produced a scroll and unrolled it on TV, and I said, I'm sorry the printing's so small that you can't read it, but there are just so many privileges to fit in. But they use this excuse of, our people are still at the bottom, so we need more money. I said, well, why so? It's obviously not working. Shoveling the money at them is obviously not working. It's obviously getting to you guys and no further. So therefore, we've got to do something different. That rather throws them. That's an inconvenient fact, you see.
See, that's exactly my point. Now, if you are a Maori in general, and I spoke to a bunch of Maori chiefs about this issue, and this is what I was saying before you came on today, was about the so-called brown elite. The chief told me that back in the 50s, I think, the original kingitanga, the chiefs of the time, were married into by a bunch of other people, and those other people basically took over the interests of the Maori chiefs and the kingitanga and all of that kind of stuff, and ever since then have been taking away everything from their people, right? And this is one of the kingitanga himself actually saying this. One of the prime bloodlines of the chiefs saying this. Is he a racist?
Oh, they're the racists, definitely. I mean, I can't use the word that Hone Harawira used to describe Pākehā meaning white people. You know what it is, but it starts with M and it's got an F in it somewhere and a K, but I'm not allowed to say it on your program. But,
it rhymes with white mother fracker.
Yes, that's right, fracker, that's right. And, that's the way they talk routinely. These guys are thugs and extortionists. Maori used to have some very, very respectable statesmen. You go into the Maori caucus room at Parliament where I've been, and there is all these wonderful carvings, and there are these 4 enormous portraits staring down, and they are Sir Apirana Ngata, Sir Maui Pomari, Sir Peter Buck, Te Rangihiro was his Maori name, and Sir James Carroll. And these guys, they thought like me. They had the same idea about Maoridom as we do, that separatism is terrible, that they can do it just like anybody else, but they've got to work together. And that's why my brand that I'm developing is called Together New Zealand. We have some wonderful sports teams in New Zealand that beat the world, the All Blacks, the Silver Ferns, the netball team, and they're multiracial teams, and they work together. Nobody says, I'm not passing the ball to you because you're Maori or you're Pākehā or you're Samoan. It's just all in together to beat the world. And New Zealanders take great pride doing that. Why can't our politicians think like that? Why does our country have to be split between races? It's ridiculous.
Well, and another element that I want to get into after the break is just how the concept of welfare and having infinite benefits and entitlements actually destroys societies. It actually stops people from being motivated to do something with their lives in a lot of cases. And this has happened, and the statistics really prove it in the Maori community, and it's very sad for these people of great potential. We'll be right back after the break with John Ansell. A minute or two, John. Would you be able to quickly flick me your landline number there so we can connect you on that, just in case your Skype drops out again, because this is the 4th or 5th time it's dropped out already and we haven't even started the show yet.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on.
Right, I got it. So don't worry, we'll get you connected on that one shortly. If
Wellington.
Yep. Don't worry, man. We got it all sorted. And you just gave everybody who's listening your phone number. So let's hope you don't get a rash of angry calls. And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Vinny Eastwood Show. It's the lighter side of genocide. Because in a world so full of chaos and madness, if you lose your sense of humour about things, you'll go frickin' nuts. We're broadcasting live 5 days a week on AmericanFreedomRadio.com from the fabulously fluoridated capital of Auckland, New Zealand, the island and chains nation in the sunny slave South Pacific. It's frickin' gorgeous down here. It's not only fluoridated, it's also Fukushima irradiated, which according to... Maybe we'll try and edit that out of the archives, eh? So, while we're getting John connected, AFR, can you hear me, by the way? Are you connecting him? Because I'm not sure 100% what's going on, because he's dropped off again. I hate this. Really hate this when you have these kind of technical difficulties. Skype's normally really, really good. Just sweet as, no problem. It works, and you got high audio quality, you can do the video and all of that kind of stuff. And on occasions, you get massively technically fracked out. It's like really nasty. Okay, now the Prime Minister John Key is good for the economy. Now, today we have a very special guest, Mr. John Ansell from Treaty Gate, and we're having some problem with his connections, as was expected. And so what I'm going to do is attempt to grab his phone number and chuck it in for AFR so we can connect him up via the phone as well. And I've only have a cell phone number for... See, this is the frustrating thing. Right,
You looking
John.
for me, Vinny?
Yeah. You're there now for maybe. Speaking of Treaty Gate, and this is what John's going to be on here today. By the way, AFR, what the frack are you doing? Are we going to connect John, or what? Are you even there? Are you having water? Are you going to the bathroom? You taking a wiki leak? What's going on here? Come on, bro. Help me out a little here. He's talking about Treaty Gate. Now, for those of you in the rest of the world who don't know what Treaty Gate is, we are a crown colony, a little country here, and on top of that, the thing that's happened